In the heart of the sprawling ghost land, where the mist never fully lifts and the trees whisper ancient secrets, lies a place untouched by the passage of time. Here, the air is heavy with the weight of unspoken stories, and the ground trembles with the echoes of past lives. Ghost land stretches as far as the eye can see, its boundaries blurred by shifting shadows and ethereal mists that curl around gnarled tree trunks like ghostly fingers. Few dare to venture into its depths, for those who do speak of unsettling encounters and inexplicable phenomena that defy rational explanation. The legends of Ghost Land are woven into the fabric of nearby villages, whispered around firesides and exchanged in hushed tones. It is said that the land itself is haunted by the spirits of those who once called it home, their restless souls unable to find peace in the afterlife. Skeptics scoff at such tales, attributing the strange occurrences to natural phenomena or overactive imaginations. Yet, there are those who know better. Old-timers with weathered faces and eyes that have seen too much speak of spectral figures that roam the woods at night, their presence felt rather than seen. Lights flicker in abandoned cabins, and eerie sounds echo through the valleys when the moon hangs low in the sky. One such tale tells of a lost soul who wanders the marshlands, searching for something long forgotten. Another speaks of a cursed well where wishes turn to dust in the mouths of those who dare to speak them aloud. These stories, passed down through generations, serve as warnings to the curious and reminders of the thin veil between the living and the dead. As twilight descends over Ghost Land, casting long shadows across its silent hills, one thing remains certain: this is a place where reality and myth converge. Where the past reaches out to touch the present, and where every rustle of leaves could be a whisper from beyond. In the heart of Ghost Land, mysteries abound, waiting to be unraveled by those brave enough to seek the truth. But beware, for not all who wander its darkened paths return unchanged. The haunting of Ghost Land continues, its secrets guarded by the spirits that dwell within its ancient woods. The road leading into Ghost Land twisted like a serpent through dense woods, the ancient trees leaning inwards as if to shield its secrets from prying eyes. Emma's fingers tightened on the steering wheel as the tires crunched over gravel, her gaze flickering nervously to the rearview mirror. Beside her, Jack leaned forward, peering through the windshield at the looming shadows ahead. "You sure this is the right way?" he asked, his voice tight with apprehension. Emma nodded, her throat dry. "According to the map, Ghost Land should be just beyond these woods. We'll find the cabin Dad mentioned." Jack ran a hand through his unruly hair, his brow furrowed. "I still can't believe Dad left us this place. It's so remote." Their father, a reclusive writer known for his fascination with the supernatural, had passed away unexpectedly, leaving them the deed to a cabin deep in the heart of Ghost Land. Emma had always been close to their father, sharing his love for ghost stories and mysteries, but Jack had never shared their passion. Yet here they were, drawn together by the need to settle their father's affairs and perhaps find closure. The forest grew denser as they drove deeper into Ghost Land, the sunlight filtering through the canopy above casting dappled shadows across the road. Emma's knuckles turned white as she navigated a particularly narrow stretch, the silence broken only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional creak of the old car. "We're almost there," Emma said, more to reassure herself than Jack. Suddenly, a figure darted across the road ahead, disappearing into the undergrowth with startling speed. Emma slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt amidst a cloud of dust and fallen leaves. Heart racing, she turned to Jack, who was staring wide-eyed at the spot where the figure had vanished. "What the hell was that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding of their hearts. Emma shook her head, her mind racing. "I don't know. Maybe it was just an animal." Jack's grip tightened on the door handle. "Maybe. They sat in tense silence for a moment longer before Emma took a deep breath and released the brake, inching the car forward once more. The incident had shaken them both, but they pressed on, determined to reach their destination. After what felt like an eternity of winding roads and ominous silence, they emerged into a clearing bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Ahead of them stood the cabin, a weather-beaten structure nestled among towering pines and surrounded by a carpet of fallen needles. The windows were dark, and the porch sagged wearily under the weight of neglect. Emma cut the engine and they sat in silence for a moment, taking in their surroundings. Despite its obvious disrepair, there was a certain charm to the cabin, a sense of history that whispered through the cracks in its walls. "Well, here we are," Jack said finally, breaking the silence. Emma nodded, her fingers curling around the keys in her lap. "Yeah, here we are." They climbed out of the car and approached the cabin cautiously, as if expecting it to vanish into thin air at any moment. The air was cool and still, the only sound their footsteps crunching on the dry ground. Emma reached out and turned the handle, the door groaning protestingly as it swung open on rusty hinges. Inside, the cabin was cloaked in shadow, the air thick with the scent of dust and damp wood. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the walls, casting eerie patterns on the floor. Emma flicked on a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness to reveal a simple living area furnished with worn chairs and a moth-eaten sofa. "It's cozy," Jack remarked, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. Emma nodded, though her gaze was drawn to a doorway at the far end of the room. "Let's see what else is here." They explored the cabin room by room, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The kitchen was sparse but functional, its countertops littered with cobwebs and forgotten utensils. The bedrooms were small and musty, the beds stripped bare save for a thin layer of dust. As they reached the last room, Emma paused in the doorway, her breath catching in her throat. It was a study, the walls lined with shelves that groaned under the weight of books and dusty manuscripts. A desk stood in the center of the room, its surface cluttered with yellowed papers and a quill pen that looked as though it had been recently used. "This must have been Dad's writing room," Emma said softly, stepping inside. Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the shelves. "Looks like he left a lot behind." They spent the next hour exploring the study, uncovering old journals filled with cryptic notes and half-finished stories. Emma's fingers trembled as she turned the brittle pages, her father's handwriting a familiar comfort in the unfamiliar surroundings. "He was obsessed with this place," Jack said, breaking the silence. "Do you think he believed in all those stories?" Emma glanced up, her gaze distant. "I think he wanted to. Maybe he thought he could find something here." Jack frowned, his brow furrowing. "Find what?" Emma shook her head, her thoughts racing. "I don't know, but there's something about this place, Jack. Something strange." They fell into a thoughtful silence, the weight of their father's legacy settling around them like a heavy cloak. Outside, the wind sighed through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted mournfully. "We should get some rest," Emma said finally, her voice breaking the silence. Jack nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, tomorrow we can figure out what to do next." They left the study and returned to the living area, where Emma found blankets and pillows tucked away in a closet. They made up makeshift beds on the floor, the soft glow of the flashlight casting shadows on the walls as they settled in for the night. As Emma closed her eyes, the events of the day replayed in her mind like a haunting melody. The figure in the woods, the cabin shrouded in silence, and the weight of her father's absence bore down on her like an invisible hand. Sleep eluded her, but eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she drifted into a fitful slumber filled with half-formed dreams and distant whispers.
It wasn't long before the supernatural encounters began. The first night in the house, Emma was awakened by the sound of footsteps echoing through the halls. She found Jack standing in the middle of his room, staring at the wall, murmuring to someone unseen. When she called his name, he snapped out of his trance, unable to remember what had happened. The next few days were filled with unexplained events. Doors slammed shut on their own, objects moved without explanation, and strange whispers filled the night. Jack became more withdrawn, often speaking of a lady in white who visited him in his dreams. Emma's initial intrigue turned into genuine fear as the malevolent presence in the house made itself known. Determined to protect her son, Emma sought the help of the locals. They told her of the house's dark history, a place where unspeakable acts had taken place, leaving behind restless spirits. The more she learned, the more she realized that she and Jack were in grave danger.